The first message humanity received from the true rulers of the galaxy was not a greeting. It was not an invitation, a warning, or even a declaration of war. It was a sentence. Every screen aboard the diplomatic vessel Aurora went black at the same time. The stars outside vanished behind a sudden wall of red symbols, each one burning across the glass like fresh wounds. Ambassador Mara Ven stood in the center of the bridge, her hands folded behind her back, watching as the translation system struggled, failed, restarted, and then finally produced 6 words that made every human in the room stop breathing. Species designation, human. Status, condemned for future threat. No one spoke. Even the engines seemed to quiet themselves. Ahead of them, the judgment ring hung around a dead star like a crown built for a corpse. It was larger than any station Earth had ever imagined, a black circular fortress wrapped in golden lights, its surface crowded with towers, docks, weapon spines, and ancient statues of species that had judged the galaxy for 10,000 years. Humanity had crossed 43 light-years to stand before it. They had brought gifts, treaties, music, medical research, and a request for peaceful recognition. The galaxy answered with a legal extinction notice. A voice filled the bridge, calm and cold, translated into perfect human speech. By authority of the Obsidian Tribunal, Earth and all dependent colonies are hereby classified as an unstable expansion species. You will surrender all military vessels, all faster-than-light engines, all planetary defense systems, and all children selected for cultural correction within 72 standard hours. Refusal will result in sterilization of your orbital infrastructure, seizure of your colonies, and permanent removal of human influence from civilized space. Captain Elias Rohn turned slowly toward Mara. His face remained disciplined, but the pulse in his neck betrayed him. Around the bridge, officers stared at their consoles as if the machines might suddenly admit this was a mistake. 72 hours. That was how long the galaxy had given Earth to kneel. Then the tribunal opened a visual channel. 100 alien faces appeared above the command deck, arranged in towering rings of judgment. Some were insectoid, some luminous, some wrapped in ceremonial armor, some so ancient they looked carved rather than born. At the center sat High Arbiter Calvor, a pale, many-eyed being draped in silver laurobes. His mouth did not move when he spoke. The entire chamber spoke for him. "Humanity," he said, "you are young, violent, emotionally unstable, and technologically reckless. You mistake survival instinct for strength. You mistake curiosity for wisdom. You mistake permission to exist for destiny." Several alien delegates laughed. It was not loud laughter. It was worse than that. It was casual. Mara Ven looked at the tribunal, then at the dead star burning without warmth behind them. She had trained her whole life for first contact, for misunderstanding, for fear, even for hostility. But she had not trained for the exact shape of this moment, where humanity was being erased by paperwork before the first handshake. Still, she did not beg. She stepped closer to the transmission and lowered her voice. "Before you issue sentence," she said, "answer one question." The laughter faded. Calvor's many eyes narrowed. "You are in no position to question this court." Mara's expression did not change. "Did you check beneath your own worlds," she asked, "before you condemned ours?" For the first time since humanity entered the judgment ring, the tribunal fell silent. Then, somewhere deep inside the dead star, something ancient began transmitting in human code. The human code did not appear on any public channel. It slipped through the Aurora's systems like a whisper remembered by machines, bypassing alien firewalls, diplomatic encryption, and every protective wall the ship's engineers had built around Earth's first embassy. One moment the bridge screens showed the frozen faces of the Obsidian Tribunal. The next, a single line of text appeared beneath the extinction notice, written in old Terran command script that had not been used by any modern navy in more than 2 centuries. "Archive pulse received. Witnesses confirmed. Do not answer yet." Captain Elias Rohn read it twice, and the blood drained from his face. He had served in the Lunar Defense Corps for 21 years. He had escorted colony fleets through pirate zones, broken smuggling rings near Europa, and once watched a reactor breach turn half a station into blue fire. Nothing in that life had ever made him look afraid until those words appeared on his own bridge. Mara noticed. So did Kael'vor. The High Arbiter leaned forward inside the projection, his many eyes reflecting the red symbols of humanity's sentence. Your vessel is emitting an unauthorized transmission, he said. Cease all activity immediately. Mar did not turn toward her crew. We are not transmitting. That is impossible. Then perhaps your court should delay execution until it understands what is speaking. The insult was quiet, precise, and dangerous. Several alien delegates stiffened. Others recoiled as if the human ambassador had spat into sacred water. The tribunal had not been contradicted in centuries, not in its own hall, not by species already under judgment. Yet Mara's calm did something worse than anger them. It made them uncertain. Kael'vor raised one thin hand, and the projection vanished. The bridge lights returned to their normal pale white, but no one moved. Beyond the viewing glass, escort drones detached from the judgment ring and formed a cage around the Aurora. Each drone was the size of a human apartment block, smooth and black, with weapon ports opening like hungry eyes. Earth's ambassadorial ship had no heavy guns. Its hull carried diplomatic markings, medical seals, cultural archives, and one ceremonial defense cannon that had not been charged since launch. They are locking weapons on us, said Lieutenant Saeed from Tactical. His voice remained steady, but his fingers hovered too long above the console. 27 platforms. Maybe more hidden behind the ring. Can we jump? Captain Roan asked. The navigation officer swallowed. No, sir. The Dead Star is surrounded by a gravity net. If we try, we tear ourselves apart before the engine's complete phase alignment. Mara looked at the last remaining line of human code, still glowing beneath the sentence like a secret. Refusing to die. Send nothing to Earth through normal channels, she said. Not yet. Roan stared at her. Ambassador, they just gave our species 72 hours. I know. And something aboard the ship just spoke in a military archive language that does not exist in our active databases. I know that too. His voice lowered. Then you know more than you told me. Mara finally looked at him, and for a moment the diplomat's mask cracked. Not from guilt. From grief. I know enough to be afraid of the answer. 43 light-years away, Earth did not panic. That was the part the tribunal's observers could not understand. Their hidden satellites watched cities continue under blue skies. Markets opened in Nairobi. Rain fell over Shanghai. Children in Buenos Aires ran through school gates with lunch packs swinging from their shoulders. Farmers in Punjab checked irrigation drones beneath the morning sun. In orbit, cargo ships still moved between stations with patient civilian rhythm. No global sirens screamed. No evacuation fleets rose. No leaders begged the tribunal for mercy. But beneath that surface calm, the planet changed. In the old tunnels below Istanbul, sealed doors opened for the first time in generations, their hinges grinding through layers of dust while gray-haired engineers stepped inside without speaking. Under the Pacific, research platforms cut their public feeds and sank 300 meters below registered depth. Across the Sahara, solar farms redirected power into black grid conduits no civilian map acknowledged. On the moon, abandoned mining elevators began moving again, descending into shafts that official records said had collapsed during the Helium War. In a small apartment in New Manila, 17-year-old Talon woke screaming before the emergency broadcast reached the public. She was not human, though Earth had given her a home, a language, and a name she could pronounce without pain. Her skin held a faint violet sheen under lamplight, and beneath her collarbone were 3 silver birthmarks shaped like broken wings. She had been found 12 years earlier inside a drifting escape pod near Saturn, half-starved, fevered, and wrapped in a blanket made from a fabric no human laboratory could identify. The pod carried no engine, no flag, no coordinates. Only one recording survived. Do not let the judges find her. Now, as the tribunal's sentence spread across Earth's networks, Talon stood barefoot in the apartment doorway, trembling while her adoptive mother held her shoulders. They came for us the same way, Talon whispered. Her mother froze. For who? Talon stared at the screen, at the black ring around the dead star, at Kael'vor's silver robes, and something buried deeper than childhood fear surfaced in her eyes. My people. Within minutes, secure agents arrived. They were polite. They were human. They carried no visible weapons, but every camera on the street turned away as they entered the building. Talon did not resist when they escorted her to the underground command convoy. She only asked one question. Did Earth know? No one answered. Beneath Seoul, in a chamber built below the old flood walls, President Amara Okonkwo stood before a circular table surrounded by military commanders, scientists, colonial governors, and 3 people whose names did not appear in any government directory. The extinction notice hovered above them in red light. No one argued about whether it was real. They were far beyond that luxury. The colonies? The president asked. Mars is secure. Titan has gone dark by choice. The Europa habitats are sealing lower levels. Proxima Station reports tribunal probes at the outer perimeter but no attack yet. And the civilian response? Confused. Angry. Not broken. The president closed her eyes for half a second. When she opened them, every person in the chamber understood that the age of pretending had ended. An old admiral with one mechanical hand leaned forward. We can activate the outer defenses within 6 hours. No, said a woman from the Science Council. If we reveal too much too early, the tribunal will trigger containment measures before the network is awake. A silence followed that word. The president turned to the 3 unnamed figures. How much did the pulse confirm? The oldest of them placed a black data shard on the table. It lit from within, displaying symbols that were not human, then slowly reshaped themselves into Terran script. Enough, he said. The dead star recognized us. So did at least 9 buried nodes inside tribunal territory. One of the colonial governors gripped the edge of the table. Inside their territory? The old man nodded. Inside their homeworlds. President Okonkwo looked up at the extinction notice, then at the faces around her, and the weight of centuries settled into her voice. They think judgment begins with them. No one interrupted her. They are about to learn judgment has memory. Back on the Aurora, Mara Ven stood alone in the diplomatic chamber while alien guards waited outside the sealed doors. The tribunal had ordered her to appear for final review in 1 hour. That was their phrase. Final review. As if extinction could be processed like paperwork and signed with clean hands. Her private terminal flickered. A new message appeared without sender identification. Ambassador Ven, protect the refugee. She is not the last survivor. Mara's breath caught. Before she could respond, the lights dimmed, and from somewhere beyond the ship, beneath the ancient metal of the judgment ring itself, another transmission pulsed through the walls. This one was not text. It was a sound. A heartbeat. Then thousands more answered from the dark. The heartbeat inside the judgment ring did not belong to any living creature. It came through the Aurora's hull in slow, measured pulses, deep enough to vibrate the bones of every human aboard. The sound passed through the deck plating, through the diplomatic chamber walls, through Mara Ven's teeth, and for one impossible second she felt as if the dead star itself had remembered how to live. Then the ship's sensors began identifying the pulses, not as sound, but as encrypted locator bursts. Captain Roan stormed into the chamber with 2 security officers behind him, his face sharper than Mara had ever seen it. Ambassador, we have a problem. Mara was still staring at the terminal message. Protect the refugee. She is not the last survivor. The words had vanished, but she could still see them in the afterimage behind her eyes. Only one, she asked. Roan did not smile. The pulses are not coming from the ring alone. We are receiving responses from nearby systems. Some are inside tribunal military zones. Some are beneath inhabited planets. One came from under the capital city of a species sitting in judgment above us. Mara felt the air change around her. Do they know? They know something is happening. Roan stepped closer and lowered his voice. But they are not reading the signal. We are. Before Mara could answer, the diplomatic chamber doors opened without permission. 2 tribunal guards entered, each twice the height of a human, their bodies hidden beneath segmented black armor. Their helmets had no faces, only vertical slits of blue light. Behind them floated a silver drone shaped like a hollow eye. Ambassador Mara Ven, it said, you will appear before the Obsidian Tribunal for final review. Captain Roan moved half a step forward. She is not going anywhere without human security. The drone rotated toward him. Your security status has been dissolved. Your vessel is under legal containment. Roan's hand hovered near his sidearm. Mara placed 2 fingers against his wrist. Not because she feared the guards. Because the drone was watching that hand too carefully, and she suddenly understood the trap. The tribunal wanted humanity to make the first visible act of violence. They wanted proof for the sentence they had already written. She stepped past Roan calmly. I will attend. The guards turned toward the corridor, but as Mara followed them, her sleeve brushed Roan's hand. In that brief contact, she passed him the black diplomatic seal from her cuff. It looked ornamental. It was not. Roan closed his fist around it without looking down. The tribunal courtroom was no longer silent when Mara entered. The alien delegates were arguing among themselves in layered voices, clicks, pulses, throat songs, and bursts of chemical mist translated too slowly to follow. Some demanded immediate seizure of the Aurora. Others accused humanity of smuggling forbidden technology into sacred space. A few watched Kael'vor with fear, not anger, and that frightened Mara more than the shouting. High Arbiter Kael'vor raised one silver hand, and the entire chamber obeyed. Humanity has triggered dormant illegal systems within tribunal space, he said. This confirms the original sentence. You are not merely a future threat. You are an active contamination. Mara stood alone beneath the vast ring of judges. If those systems are in your territory, perhaps they are not human. A ripple moved through the chamber. Kael'vor's many eyes sharpened. Careful. No, Mara said. You issued an extinction order against my species and demanded our children. I am finished being careful. A sound like a blade being drawn passed through the alien seats. Mara lifted her chin. What are you afraid we found? For the first time, Kael'vor did not answer immediately. Far away on Earth, Talon sat inside the underground command chamber beneath Sol, wrapped in a thermal blanket while doctors pretended not to study her too openly. The extinction notice had awakened something in her memories, but those memories did not return as clean images. They came as fragments, her mother's 3 hands pressing a silver pendant against her chest, a city of glass towers folding into white fire, a courtroom voice saying her species had been corrected, not killed. President Okonkwo stood across from her with the patience of someone who knew fear could not be rushed. Talon, we need to know what you remember about the judges. Talon looked at the projection of Kael'vor and trembled. They do not destroy worlds because they hate them. The room went still. Then why? Asked the old admiral. Talon's eyes filled with tears. Because they are afraid of what those worlds might become. A technician at the far wall suddenly cursed under his breath. Screens across the chamber filled with star maps, hundreds of red points blooming one by one across the spiral arm. The science councilwoman stepped closer. What am I looking at? Recovered archive coordinates, the technician said. From the pulse. They are not military installations. The old admiral's mechanical hand clenched. Then what are they? The technician swallowed. Graves. The room darkened as the map expanded. Hundreds became thousands. Systems marked uninhabited by tribunal records showed traces of past industrial activity. Planets listed as lifeless showed buried cities. Moons labeled naturally fractured carried the scars of orbital bombardment. Civilization after civilization had vanished from official history, each one erased so completely that the galaxy had forgotten to mourn them. Talon stared at the map as if she were seeing a cemetery that finally had names. My people are there, she whispered. President Okonkwo's voice hardened. Not just yours. A second layer of data opened. Species classifications. Threat scores. Cultural predictions. Survival probabilities. The tribunal had not judged civilizations based on crimes committed. It judged them based on what they might one day become. Species with high innovation rates were restricted. Species with strong social bonds were broken apart. Species with unusual physics, medicine, memory, or empathy were labeled unstable. Humanity's file sat at the center of the projection, marked in black. The president leaned forward. "Open it." The system refused. A line of ancient text appeared instead. "Humanity, observe until awakening. Do not engage before threshold event." No one spoke for a long moment. Then the science councilwoman whispered what everyone else was thinking. "They knew about us before first contact." On the Aurora, Captain Roan used Mara's diplomatic seal to unlock a compartment hidden beneath the ambassadorial archive. He expected emergency codes, perhaps orders from Earth, perhaps one more secret he had never been cleared to know. Instead, the compartment contained a single crystal wafer, older than the ship itself, etched with markings from at least 12 non-human languages. Lieutenant Sayid stared at it. "Captain, that is not United Earth technology." Roan inserted it into the secure reader anyway. The bridge screens changed. For 3 seconds, they showed a field of stars as seen from Earth's night sky centuries ago. Then came sound, static, old and fragile, followed by a human voice distorted by distance and time. "To anyone out there listening, this is Earth." Roan stopped breathing. The message continued, a primitive radio transmission from humanity's early space age, sent long before Earth had colonies, long before starships, long before humans knew the tribunal existed. Then the screen split, showing the same message filed inside an obsidian tribunal archive, stamped, translated, and marked with a date more than 300 years old. They had heard humanity calling into the dark. They had answered with surveillance. Inside the courtroom, Mara watched Kael'vor's expression and knew the truth had reached her ship. The High Arbiter knew it too. His robes shifted like liquid metal as he rose from his throne. "You were never meant to see the archive," he said. Mara's pulse slowed. "Then it exists." Around them, several alien delegates turned toward Kael'vor in visible confusion. They did not know. Not all of them. The tribunal's secret was not shared even with the civilizations that served it. Kael'vor looked past Mara, toward something far beyond the courtroom, and for the first time his voice carried no ceremony, no law, only command. "Seal the human vessel. Seize the refugee on Earth. Burn every dormant node before it fully wakes." Mara felt the floor beneath her feet pulse once more. This time, the heartbeat answered in thousands of voices. The thousands of voices did not speak in words at first. They rose through the judgment ring as pulses, tones, pressure waves, and coded flashes, each one different, each one old, each one answering the heartbeat beneath Mara Ven's feet. The courtroom trembled just enough for the alien delegates to notice. Ancient lamps flickered above their thrones. Translation systems stuttered. Somewhere beyond the walls, deep inside machinery older than Earth's first city, locks began opening that no tribunal engineer remembered building. Kael'vor saw the fear spread before anyone admitted it. Some delegates recoiled from their own consoles as unknown symbols appeared across their screens. Others looked toward him for explanation, and that made him more dangerous than anger ever could. An empire could survive hatred. It could survive rebellion. It could even survive defeat. But it could not survive its servants realizing the throne did not know everything. "Remove the human," Kael'vor ordered. The guards seized Mara by both arms. Their armored hands closed hard enough to bruise, but she did not struggle. She looked up at the ring of alien faces, not at the ones who hated her, but at the ones who were afraid. Fear was a door. She only needed to leave it open. "You heard them," she said as the guards dragged her backward. "The dead are not silent. They were buried under your laws, under your monuments, under your polished history. But they remember you." Kael'vor's voice cut through the chamber. "Silence her." One guard drove a shock baton into Mara's side. Pain exploded white behind her eyes, and for one breath her knees almost failed. The delegates watched. Some with satisfaction. Some with shame. Some with a horror they were not yet brave enough to name. Mara lifted her head anyway. "Earth remembers too." The doors sealed between her and the courtroom, but not before she saw Kael'vor turn away from the delegates and issue a private command to something hidden below his throne. Across the galaxy, The tribunal stopped pretending this was a legal matter. Blockade nets unfolded around human colonies like black flowers blooming in space. Mars lost contact with 3 survey convoys near the outer belt. Titan's ice elevators shut down under threat of orbital fire. At Proxima Station, families watched tribunal vessels gather beyond the mining shield, their hulls arranged in a perfect circle, close enough to be seen with civilian telescopes. No shots were fired. Not yet. That was the cruelty of it. The tribunal understood fear as an instrument. It placed the knife against the throat and waited for imagination to do the cutting. Then came the broadcast. Every public channel across known space filled with the seal of the Obsidian Tribunal. Vor appeared not in rage, but in sorrowful ceremony, draped in silver robes, his voice softened into something almost paternal. He did not call humanity evil. That would have been easier to resist. He called humanity tragic, dangerous, brilliant without wisdom, compassionate without discipline. A species whose emotional volatility had already awakened illegal weapons beneath sovereign worlds. Earth has hidden itself among the bones of extinct civilizations, he told the galaxy. It has stolen forbidden knowledge from ruins it does not understand. It has activated dormant systems inside peaceful territories. The sentence was not cruelty. It was prevention. The propaganda moved faster than ships. Neutral governments withdrew recognition requests. Trade allies closed their gates. Civilian vessels carrying medicine to human frontier colonies were turned away from refueling ports by species that had smiled at Earth only days before. Old friends went quiet. New friends vanished. Worlds that had secretly doubted the tribunal now feared being seen as human sympathizers. Earth was not surrounded by fleets alone. It was surrounded by silence. In the underground command chamber beneath Sol, President Okonkwo watched the diplomatic map darken system by system. Each red mark meant a route lost, a treaty suspended, a colony isolated. No one in the room spoke of surrender, but the shape of the war had changed. They were not fighting ships anymore. They were fighting a story. They are making us look like the thing they warned everyone about, said the Science Councilwoman. The old admiral's mechanical hand tapped once against the table. Then we stop waiting. We wake the network. All of it. No, President Okonkwo said. The admiral turned sharply. Madam President, our colonies are cut off. Our ambassador is detained. Tribunal agents are already inside our system. If we hold back now, they will carve us apart one world at a time. If we reveal the full network under panic, the galaxy will see weapons first and truth second. Okonkwo's eyes did not leave the map. Vor wants that. He wants humanity to frighten everyone into obedience for him. Then what do you suggest? Before she could answer, every light in the chamber died. For 3 seconds there was total darkness. Then emergency power returned in red strips along the floor, and a security officer shouted from the corridor. A dozen screens flashed with camera feeds from the residential wing where Talon had been resting under guard. The first camera showed an empty hallway. The second showed 2 fallen agents. The third showed a blur of silver lorobes passing through a wall as if matter had politely stepped aside. Talon's room was empty. Her thermal blanket lay on the floor. Beside it, burned into the concrete in perfect tribunal script, was a message. Evidence retrieved. President Okonkwo went completely still. The old admiral's voice dropped into something colder than anger. They took her from Earth. No, the Science Councilwoman whispered, pointing to the sensor log. They never entered from orbit. They came through one of the dormant nodes. A terrible understanding settled over the room. The network humanity had hoped to use as a shield had doors buried inside it. Doors the tribunal still knew how to open. On the Aurora, Captain Roan received the news through a burst transmission hidden inside a maintenance error. He was standing on the bridge, surrounded by tribunal drones, when the message appeared for half a second on his tactical display. Talon taken. Node breach confirmed. Protect Mara. Do not activate full system. Roan closed his eyes once, then opened them as a captain again. Around him, his crew waited for orders, pale but unbroken. The Aurora was trapped. Earth was blockaded. Their ambassador was in custody. The one refugee who might prove the tribunal's crimes had been stolen from the most secure chamber on the planet. And still, no human had fired first. That restraint was beginning to feel less like patience and more like a blade held backward against their own throats. Deep inside the judgment ring, Mara woke on a cold floor with her wrists bound in bands of living metal. Across from her, behind a transparent wall, Talon sat in a containment chair too large for her thin body. The girl's violet skin was ashen. Her silver birthmarks glowed faintly beneath her collarbone. Mara pushed herself upright despite the pain in her ribs. Talon. The girl looked at her with eyes full of terror and recognition. They are going to use me to open something. A hidden door slid apart, and Kael'vor entered alone. No, he said softly. She is going to help us close what your species has awakened. Mara forced herself to stand. You abducted a child from Earth. Kael'vor's many eyes settled on her. Do not pretend innocence, Ambassador. Humanity has been sheltering a living key. Talon began to shake. Mara stepped closer to the wall. A key to what? For the first time, Kael'vor smiled. Before he could answer, an alarm rippled through the chamber. A projection opened above them, showing a small human colony world named Haven 3, a blue-green settlement planet with fewer than 2 million civilians. Above it, a tribunal starkiller unfolded its wings around the local sun. Kael'vor looked at Mara as if offering mercy. Your president has 1 hour to surrender the network, he said. Or humanity will watch its first colony burn. For one impossible second, every human watching Haven 3 believed the sun had already begun to die. The tribunal weapon unfolded around the star in 6 black petals, drinking light until the colony world fell into twilight. Oceans darkened. Cities lit emergency grids. In school shelters, children looked through reinforced glass at a sky the color of ash. The star did not explode. It dimmed slowly, deliberately, as if extinction itself had learned patience. President Okonkwo stood beneath Sol, watching the countdown burn across the command table. 59 minutes. 58. Haven 3 had no fortress moons, no naval dockyards, no strategic value. It was a farming colony of wheat fields and river cities, filled with families who had trusted Earth's promise of open skies. They picked civilians, the old admiral said. They picked them because they know we will not gamble with children. The science councilwoman stared at the readings. If we activate the full silent network, they may use Talon to trigger whatever closure system they still control. If we do nothing, Haven 3 dies. Okonkwo looked at the countdown and felt the oldest cruelty of empire. Tyrants always tried to reduce morality to 2 doors, surrender or massacre, obedience or guilt. Humanity would have chosen surrender once. Perhaps that was what Kael'vor expected. Perhaps that was why he had already lost. Wake only the nearest node, Okonkwo said. Every face turned toward her. The science councilwoman went pale. Madam President, partial activation may not be stable. Then we learn quickly. Which node? Okonkwo's eyes moved to the buried pulse beneath Haven 3's outer moon, a moon surveyed 12 years earlier and declared dead. That one. On Haven 3, the sky split open without warning. Not with fire. Not with missiles. With geometry. Above the colony moon, a ring of pale blue light carved itself out of empty space, circular and silent. It expanded until it was wider than the moon itself, then folded inward like an eye opening backward. The tribunal star killer detected it too late. Its black petals rotated toward the anomaly, weapons charging, but the ring did not attack. It sang. The first note crossed the system as gravity. Every ocean on Haven 3 lifted and fell again. Every window vibrated. Every human heart seemed to skip in the same instant. The beam choking the sun bent away as if redirected by a hand too vast to see. The tribunal weapon fired countermeasures, flooding space with antimatter flares, but the blue ring ignored them. Then something emerged from the moon. It was not a ship, though it moved with purpose. It was not a station, though cities could have fit inside it. It rose through rock that should have crushed anything buried beneath, shedding mountains like dust. Its body was made of interlocking arcs, glass dark metal, and luminous veins arranged in patterns that hurt the eye. Across its hull were carvings in hundreds of languages no living being had spoken for thousands of years. The tribunal called it illegal technology. Talon, imprisoned behind glass inside the judgment ring, saw the image above Kael'vor's chamber and began to cry. Mara looked from the girl to the rising structure. "You know what that is?" Talon nodded, tears slipping down her face. "Not what? Who?" Kael'vor turned sharply. "Silence." But Talon's fear had changed. Something warmer had entered it, like memory finding a handhold in the dark. "My mother said when a people died unjustly, they sent their last promise into the void. Not revenge. Not hatred. A promise that someone, somewhere, would survive long enough to remember the truth." Mara stepped closer to the glass. "The silent network." Talon nodded again. "It was never human." In soul, the same realization spread like sunrise and terror at once. The awakening structure did not respond only to Terran command. It responded to refugee codes hidden within Terran command, to fragments humanity had preserved without understanding. Earth had not invented the silent network. Earth had inherited it. The first refugees had reached the solar system long before official contact, not in fleets, but as wreckage, escape pods, damaged archives, and dying messengers who crossed impossible distances to place their final knowledge in the hands of a species too young to be noticed. Humans found them in ice, in craters, in silent debris between planets. They buried the discoveries because they were afraid. Then they studied them because humans could never leave a locked door alone. Then, with reverence instead of conquest, they repaired what the dead left behind. And the dead had trusted them. At Haven 3, the ancient moon structure released a second pulse. This one touched the tribunal starkiller. The black petals froze. Their beam collapsed. The colony's sun flared back to life, flooding the planet in gold. Across the surface, millions watched daylight return and did not cheer at first. They simply stood in silence, realizing their children had been alive, then almost dead, then alive again within a breath. Then the tribunal weapon folded inward. It did not explode. It did not burn. Every gun, engine, shield, and command core unraveled into harmless streams of black dust. The galaxy saw everything. Neutral worlds that had believed Kael'vor watched humans save a colony without destroying the attackers. Occupied species watched an ancient weapon refuse slaughter. Tribunal members watched carvings from erased civilizations glow across the moonstructure's hull and recognized symbols their histories had called myths. The story Kael'vor had built around humanity cracked in public. President Okonkwo opened a broadcast across the galaxy. "The tribunal told you humanity stole forbidden weapons," she said. "That is a lie. We were given a graveyard and asked to protect its memory. We were given the last work of civilizations erased before they could speak. We did not wake it to conquer you. We woke it because the judges aimed extinction at children." On the judgment ring, several delegates rose from their seats. Some in outrage. Some in horror. Some because they could no longer sit beneath the weight of what they had witnessed. Kael'vor cut the broadcast from his chamber, but he could not cut it from the galaxy. Talon's silver birthmarks shone brighter than before. Mara saw Kael'vor notice, and in that instant she understood why the tribunal had taken the girl. The silent network had answered Earth, but it had recognized Talon. Not as a survivor. Not merely as evidence. As command. Kael'vor stepped toward the containment chair. "Begin extraction," he ordered. The glass around Talon turned black, and beneath the judgment ring, every dormant node in the galaxy opened its eye. The first node opened beneath the tribunal homeworld. It happened on Ver Athol, a planet of glass cities and silver oceans where the ruling species had spent 3,000 years believing obedience meant safety. Their children learned tribunal law before neighboring stars. Then the ground below their capital split in a perfect circle, not with destruction, but with the patience of something that had waited longer than empires. A column of blue-white light rose from beneath the city and passed through every building without breaking a window. People froze in streets, transit towers, prayer halls, and military academies as symbols appeared across the sky. They belonged to a species the tribunal had declared myth 7 centuries earlier, A species accused of destabilizing reality because they shared memory across generations. Official history said they collapsed naturally. The light told a different truth. The tribunal had burned them. Then another node opened. Then 10. Then 100. Across the galaxy, dead moons awakened, asteroid graves unfolded, ocean trenches shone with buried architecture, and forgotten machines rose from beneath worlds that had never known they were tombs. The silent network did not attack. It testified. Every node projected memories into the sky, last messages, erased cities, children hidden in escape capsules, judges signing extinction orders while fleets waited behind them. The galaxy did not hear humanity's accusation. It heard the dead speak. And the dead named the Obsidian Tribunal. HFY watched the uprising begin from the chamber beneath the judgment ring, his face reflected in the black glass around Talon's chair. He had prepared for human defiance, desperate attacks, and martyrdom. He had not prepared for evidence with a heartbeat. "Proceed faster," he said. The machines around Talon extended silver filaments toward the glowing birthmarks beneath her collarbone. She screamed when the first filament touched her skin, but the sound did not break Mara Van. It focused her. Bound to the floor by living metal, Mara studied the guards, the restraints, and the half-second delay between HFY's commands and the system's obedience. Pain had narrowed the world to essentials, and humans had always been most dangerous when reduced to essentials. "You are too late," HFY said. "Your species woke what it cannot control." Mara forced herself onto one knee. "No. You are afraid we can." His calm cracked. That network was designed by dying civilizations and species too emotional to accept necessary correction. It is unstable. Sentimental machinery. Mara smiled through blood on her lip. "That sounds like us." The second filament touched Talon, and the chamber shook. On Earth, President Okonkwo received 37 requests for aid from worlds that had abandoned humanity less than an hour before. Some were from colonies trapped under blockade. Some were from species that had served the judges for centuries. Some messages were simple, "We believe you." Others were harder, "Help us before they silence us too." The old admiral looked at the expanding tactical map. "If we answer them all, we spread ourselves thin. If we answer none," Okonkwo said, "HFY proves fear is stronger than truth." The science councilwoman pointed toward the judgment ring projection. "The nodes are awake, but not synchronized. Talon's genetic pattern is being used as a forced command bridge. If the tribunal completes extraction, they may shut the network down or turn it against every connected world." "How long?" "Maybe 40 minutes. Maybe less." Okonkwo looked at the map of a galaxy catching fire with memory. "Then we do both. We help them and we go for the ring." The admiral stared at her. "With what fleet?" "Our heavy ships are guarding Earth and the colonies." Okonkwo turned toward the oldest unnamed figure, the keeper of secrets. "Not the fleet." The old man closed his eyes. "Madam President, once we open that channel, every node will know where Earth is." "They already know where Earth is," she said. "Now let them know who we are." Beneath the Atlantic, something vast moved. It had slept below volcanic stone and cold black water since before the first official starship left Earth. Ocean floors cracked. Then a structure the size of a mountain rose from the abyss, wrapped in coral, cables, and alien metal repaired by human hands. It was not a weapon platform. It was a beacon. The Atlantic beacon opened, and Earth spoke through the silent network. Not with surrender. Not with threats. With an offer. To every world under blockade. To every species lied to. To every soldier ordered to fire on civilians. To every servant of the tribunal who had ever wondered why peace required so many graves. Humanity offers sanctuary, evidence, coordination, and protection. Stand down, stand aside, or stand with us. For 7 terrible minutes, nothing happened. Then a tribunal cruiser above Proxima Station powered down its weapons. Then 3 blockade ships over Ver Athel refused orders. Then an entire defense ring around a mining world opened its gates and let human relief vessels through. The galaxy did not rebel all at once. It cracked, line by line, crew by crew, conscience by conscience. Kael'vor had built obedience into law, but he had forgotten that law required belief. The nodes had murdered belief. Inside the Judgment Ring, alarms howled as sectors lost loyalty confirmation. Rebellions on 6 worlds. Military refusals in 9 fleets. Evidence riots in tribunal capitals. Human broadcasts spreading through forbidden bands. The old order had begun bleeding. "Activate the cleansing protocol," he said. The guards around Mara went still. Even they feared those words. A lower voice answered from the chamber walls. "Protocol requires full command key." Kael'vor looked at Talon. Mara pulled against her restraints until the metal cut into her wrists. "What is the cleansing protocol?" Kael'vor's eyes did not leave the girl. "A mercy written for a galaxy too fragile to survive uncontrolled memory. If the network cannot be reclaimed, every connected node will purge itself." Mara understood before he finished. Every awakened moon. Every buried archive. Every planet now linked to the dead. Every colony and ally touched by humanity's broadcast. Erased to prevent truth from spreading. Talon lifted her head inside the black glass. Her eyes were glowing now, not violet, but the same blue-white as the nodes. When she spoke, her voice carried another voice beneath it, older and broken by grief. "Mara," she whispered, "he does not need my consent." The final filament descended toward her heart. At the same moment, Captain Roan's voice burst through Mara's hidden earpiece, ragged with static and impossible hope. "Ambassador, we found a path beneath the courtroom. But it leads under Kael'vor's throne." Mara Ven did not look at Kael'vor when Captain Roan's voice crackled through the hidden earpiece. She kept her eyes on Talon, on the final silver filament descending toward the girl's chest, on the way the black glass around the containment chair trembled as if something inside it was trying to remember how to scream. Beneath the Judgment Ring, under the oldest courtroom in the galaxy, a path had opened beneath the throne of the being who had condemned humanity to extinction. That was not luck. That was not rescue arriving on time. That was the dead making one final doorway for the living. "Roan," Mara whispered, barely moving her lips, "do not engage unless I give the signal." Static answered first. Then his voice returned, low and strained. "Ambassador, with respect, if we wait, the girl dies and half the galaxy burns." Mara pulled against her restraints again, feeling the living metal tighten around her wrists like a predator reacting to fear. "Then do not wait for safety. Wait for timing." Kael'vor turned one eye toward her. "Still whispering to soldiers?" Mara lifted her chin. "Still afraid of one diplomat?" For a moment, the chamber stopped around that sentence. The guards shifted. The machines paused. Even Talon's breathing seemed to catch behind the black glass. Kael'vor had spent centuries wearing law-like armor, but Mara saw the crack now. It was not anger. It was calculation stretched too thin. His empire was unraveling outside the ring. His own fleets were refusing orders. His ancient secrets were being written in light above the cities that once worshipped him. And now a bound human woman, bruised, bleeding, and surrounded, was speaking to him as if he were already losing. "You mistake delay for power," he said. "No," Mara replied. "I mistake panic for confession." His robes shifted like a storm of liquid silver. "Proceed." The final filament dropped. Talon screamed. The sound tore through the chamber, but it did not stay human or alien or anything that belonged to one throat. It multiplied. 1,000 voices screamed with her, then 10,000, then more than the mind could hold. On Verathel, people fell to their knees as the sky flashed white. Above Proxima Station, blockade ships lost power as their crews heard children crying in languages extinct before their species learned mathematics. Beneath Earth's Atlantic, the beacon flared so bright that sailors on the surface saw blue light rising through the waves like dawn from below. The cleansing protocol had begun waking. In the hidden passage beneath the courtroom, Captain Roan and 6 human marines crawled through a tunnel not built for human bodies. The walls were ribbed with alien alloy and old bone-white circuitry, pulsing in time with Talon's scream. Roan's shoulder was bleeding where a tribunal drone had clipped him during the breach. Lieutenant Saeed dragged a portable phase cutter behind him, its power cell nearly dead. No one complained. No one asked whether they would return to the Aurora. They had heard the same broadcast as everyone else. They knew the path ahead ended beneath Kael'vor's throne, and beyond that waited the command spine of the tribunal itself. A young Marine named Imani paused when the tunnel split into 3 impossible directions. The left passage curved upward. The right sloped into darkness. The center was sealed by a wall covered in symbols from erased species. "Captain," she breathed, "which way?" Roan looked at the symbols, and for one heartbeat he felt the full insanity of what humanity had become. They had come to the stars with treaties and songs, and now they were crawling through the bones of murdered civilizations to stop a judge from killing the galaxy with a stolen child. He almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was human. He pressed his bloody hand against the sealed wall. "We are not here as conquerors," he said quietly. "We are here because someone asked not to be forgotten." The symbols changed. The wall opened. Inside the chamber above, Kael'vor watched Talon's birthmarks blaze like captured stars. Data spiraled around her in violent streams. Node locations. Genetic keys. Archive layers. Dead languages translated into command architecture. The tribunal systems were forcing her body to become a bridge, not because she understood the network, but because the network remembered her blood. Mara saw the agony in the girl's eyes and felt something inside her go colder than rage. "You call this law?" "Marist. I call it survival." "You call every murder survival." Kael'vor moved closer, lowering his voice until only she could hear him. "Because it is. You think your species is special because it feels horror before doing what must be done. That is not morality. That is hesitation decorated as virtue." Mara stared at him. "And you think your species is strong because it stopped hesitating." His eyes narrowed. "That is not strength," she said. "That is what cowards call peace after they kill everyone who might challenge them." Kael'vor struck her across the face. The blow threw her to the floor. Pain burst through her jaw, hot and bright, but Mara smiled before she pushed herself back up. She had made him hit her. In front of the guards. In front of the chamber recorders. In front of whatever fragments of the network were still watching. The High Arbiter had finally stopped pretending. Then he made his greatest mistake. He opened a private channel to the Tribunal Armada and forgot that the dead were listening. "Full containment authority is restored," Kael'vor said. "All loyal vessels will prepare purge strikes against compromised worlds. Begin with Earth if necessary." The message did not stay private. It spilled through every awakened node, every rebel channel, every civilian emergency band, every ship that had been waiting to decide which side history would remember. Across the galaxy, crews heard the order. Parents heard it. Soldiers heard it. Species that had once trusted the tribunal heard their protector command the murder of worlds to preserve his throne. That was the moment obedience died. Above 3 tribunal capitals, planetary shields turned away from human colonies and locked onto their own command citadels. In the Proxima blockade, alien captains opened fire on the tribunal vessels that still aimed at civilians. On Ver Athel, cadets in Silver Law academies tore tribunal insignias from their uniforms. Across 1,000 systems, fear did not vanish, but it changed direction. Mara rose slowly, blood on her mouth, eyes fixed on Kael'vor. "You wanted the galaxy to see humanity as a threat." The floor beneath the throne cracked. She heard Roan's voice in her ear. "We are under him." Mara smiled. "Instead," she said, "you showed them you." The throne exploded upward. Human marines breached through smoke, light, and shattered black stone. Roan came first, firing a pulse round into the nearest guard's weapon arm before the creature could move. Saeed rolled behind him and threw the phase cutter across the floor toward Mara. She caught it with bound hands, slammed the activation stud against the restraint, and white heat sliced through the living metal. Kael'vor did not flee. He stepped backward toward the central command pillar, extending one hand into the light still pouring from Talon's body. "Too late," he said. "The protocol has accepted the key." Mara lunged for Talon. Roan lunged for Kael'vor. The Marines opened fire. The command pillar split open, revealing a core of burning blue-white memory, and from inside it came a voice that was not Talon's, not human, and not dead. Final authority required. Talon's eyes opened. She looked directly at Mara through the black glass and whispered, "It wants to know who we are." Then every weapon in the chamber, human and alien alike, turned toward Earth's ambassador. For one breath, Mara Ven stood at the center of every aim in the room. Human rifles, tribunal cannons, guard weapons, ceiling turrets, and the cold mechanical eyes of the command pillar all locked onto her chest as if the galaxy itself had mistaken her heartbeat for a verdict. Captain Roan froze halfway across the shattered throne platform, blood running down one side of his face. Kael'vor's hand remained buried in the burning core, his many eyes wide with triumph and terror. Behind the black glass, Talon trembled beneath the final light of the silent network, no longer screaming, no longer only a frightened girl, but something the dead had chosen to ask one last question through. Final authority required. The voice repeated inside the chamber, and this time it echoed far beyond the judgment ring. It crossed human colonies, rebel ships, tribunal capitals, occupied moons, refugee camps, and the buried graves of civilizations that had waited too long to be heard. On Earth, President Okonkwo heard it through the Atlantic Beacon. Haven 3, children in shelters heard it through cracked emergency speakers. On Ver Athel, citizens standing beneath skies filled with evidence heard it in their bones. It wants to know who we are. Mara understood then why every weapon had turned toward her. Not because the network wanted her dead. Because it wanted humanity's answer with no disguise, no committee, no law, no war speech polished clean for history. It wanted the truth at the exact moment power became absolute. Kael'vor understood it too. His voice sharpened. Tell it you are warriors. Tell it you are executioners. Tell it what your species becomes when threatened. Mara looked at him, then at Talon. The girl's eyes were full of the dead, but the tears on her face were her own. Mara lowered the phase cutter. "We are not what you made us fear," she said. The weapons did not move. Mara took one step toward Talon, slow enough that no system could mistake it for attack. "We are the species that found your graves and did not strip them for trophies. We are the children of a world that nearly destroyed itself and still learned how to reach for the stars with open hands. We are angry. We are afraid. We are flawed enough to want revenge and stubborn enough to refuse it when it would make us smaller." Kael'vor's eyes narrowed. "Lies." "No," Mara said. "Choice." The blue-white core pulsed. Across the galaxy, the silent network opened every hidden archive at once. Not as weapons. As memory. The full record of the Obsidian Tribunal poured into public space. Extinction orders, erased treaties, falsified histories, slave transfers renamed relocation, planetary sterilizations renamed quarantine, children stolen under correction mandates, entire species reduced to threat scores before they had ever harmed a soul. The galaxy did not need humanity to accuse the tribunal anymore. The tribunal's own records accused it. Kael'vor ripped his hand from the core and staggered back. "Stop this." Mara moved faster than pain should have allowed. She struck the containment release beside Talon's chair, and Captain Roan fired into the locking mechanism at the same instant. The black glass fractured. Talon fell forward, and Mara caught her before she hit the floor. For a moment, all the ancient light inside the girl flickered wildly, searching for a command, a victim, a final target. Mara held her tighter. "You are not a key," she whispered. "You are a child." Talon sobbed once, and the silent network answered. The cleansing protocol died. Not exploded. Not overloaded. It simply stopped obeying fear. The weapons across the chamber lowered one by one. Then the judgment ring began to shut itself down. Court banners went dark. Execution codes dissolved. The massive gravity net around the dead star collapsed into harmless light. Outside, tribunal warships lost central command authority and drifted in stunned silence while their crews watched the truth flood every screen. Kael'vor backed toward the broken throne, suddenly smaller than his robes. "Without us, the galaxy will fall into chaos." President Okonkwo's voice came through the network, steady and clear. Then let the galaxy choose order without chains. For the first time in 10,000 years, the tribunal asked for surrender terms. Humanity did not answer with fire. They answered with witnesses. Every surviving delegate was ordered to stand trial before the worlds they had judged. Every occupied species received open access to its stolen history. Every blockade was lifted under the watch of mixed fleets, human and alien together. The judgment ring was not destroyed. Its court was emptied, its execution chambers sealed, its dead star surrounded by memorial lights from 1,000 liberated worlds. What had once been the galaxy's throne of fear became its largest archive of truth. Weeks later, Talon stood on Earth beneath a sunrise she had once believed she would never see again. Beside her, Mara Ven carried one arm in a sling. Captain Roan stood nearby with his crew, bruised, exhausted, alive. President Okonkwo faced representatives from hundreds of species gathered not as subjects, not as suspects, but as equals who did not yet know how to trust one another and had come anyway. Talon held a folded banner in her hands. It bore the symbol of her lost people, 3 silver wings broken but not fallen. Slowly she raised it beside Earth's flag. No one cheered at first. The silence was too sacred. Then, across the plaza, an alien child from a former tribunal world stepped forward and placed a small stone at the base of the banner. Another followed. Then another. Soon, beings of every shape and color were leaving names, fragments, flowers, tools, metals, and pieces of home for civilizations they had been taught never existed. Mara watched Talon look up at the flags, and in the girl's face she saw the answer the silent network had asked for. Humanity had been condemned as a future threat. Instead, it became the memory of the murdered, the shield of the living, and the first species powerful enough to win judgment without becoming the judge. Far above Earth, the Aurora prepared to depart again. Not as a prisoner ship. Not as bait. As the first vessel of a new assembly built on one dangerous, beautiful promise. No species would ever again be erased because someone feared what it might become. And deep beneath the Atlantic, the silent network went quiet. Not dead. Listening.